if those who suppress the vote and those who block immigrant rights and those who try to block health care and block living wages and cut taxes for the wealthy and raise problems for the poor, if they are cynical enough to be together, we have to be smart enough to come together. We are siloed no more. We understand these are interlocking injustices that require a moral intersectional response.
Trymaine Lee is on the ground in Greensboro, North Carolina, with more on the campaign.
The organizers of the Poor People's Campaign are a couple days into their 22-state tour, where they hope to go state to state to organize the poor and most vulnerable among us. When you hear numbers like 40 million people living in poverty in America, that's only one marker. When you think that for a family of four, the poverty line is about $25,750. There are tens of millions of more people who work every single day, but are also poor and struggling to make ends meet. So the organizers hope to bring a cross-section of people across the country, white, black, brown, members of the LGBTQ community and marginalized communities across the country, together to form what they believe would be a very powerful voting bloc. Now, here in Greensboro, North Carolina, the second stop on their tour, hundreds of people marched, they chanted, some held signs, one saying that working a poverty wage is violence. Finding commonality across these communities. And they're hoping in places like Wisconsin, when you think that Donald Trump won by a very thin margin of 20,000 or so people. You think about other battleground states like Pennsylvania, that, again, Donald Trump won by a thin margin. They're hoping that poor people, by coming out city to city, state to state, will not only make their voices heard, but push politicians and those in power to address a more equitable policy agenda that focuses on the poor. And I spoke to Dr. Reverend William Barber, and he said one thing. He said that, while so many people, Republicans, are focused on tax breaks and Democrats are focused on the middle class and labor unions, very few politicians ever mention the word poor or address the needs of those living in poverty. So here we are again in Greensboro, the second stop on a 22-state tour that the organizers say will culminate in June of next year, June 2020, in Washington, D.C., with a mass assembly and march to culminate what they're calling the Do More Tour, pushing for people who have not been traditional voters, people whose lives are so complicated by poverty, will come out and make their voices heard, and again, force politicians and those in power to have a more equitable, fair agenda.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.